Alright guys, we gotta talk about the Dwarf Fortress Magic update. This is a major update that does not yet exist, but it is on the horizon. It is started to be implemented within Adventure Mode. So we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk about magic as it exists already in Dwarf Fortress, historical Dwarf Fortress magic. We're gonna talk about what has been promised as upcoming in terms of how that's gonna evolve and grow. And we're also gonna talk about the specifics, the mechanics of how it's being implemented, how it exists in the latest versions as kind of a work in progress. Alright, so a great place to start is the DF Wiki, which describes magic as it generally exists in Dwarf Fortress, and it alludes to what's coming next. So we'll start there, and then we're going to look at the patch notes. The Dwarf Fortress development blog, last update from December 18th, 2025. So reading from the wiki, magic currently exists in limited form in Dwarf Fortress. With modding, it is also one of the many ways that interactions can be manifested. There seems to be some code present that has to do with magic, but there is nothing that uses the code or activates it. For example, the magical creature token tag is recognized as a valid token. That is to say, the game does not give an error when it is found. Now, this is what alludes to what's coming next. A fully working and procedurally generated magic system is currently in the works, according to Toady 1's development log, with recent changes to Adventure Mode as of version 51, containing parts of the framework for it. Don't worry, we're going to talk more about what that means. In the general canon of Dwarf Fortress, up until this patch, which again is that I don't believe, to the extent of my knowledge, there is no release date. This is just the next things that they are currently working on. But previous to that, and for all of Dwarf Fortress history, the many decades, the main types of known magic are necromancy. We've talked about this a lot on the channel. Certain dwarves will kind of like live forever, and then they will randomly, either when scared or just whenever they want to, as one of the behaviors they might choose to do, they will cast some kind of spell that sickens or usually raises the dead. I mean, necromancy. Cast plague or all kinds of bad stuff. Mostly raising undead creatures or bringing like bits of flesh back to life. Another type of known magic as listed by the wiki, divine intervention. So this is a very specific example. If a dwarf or something desecrates a temple that's dedicated to a god, that god is real in the game, and they can curse things, they can turn a dwarf into a werebeast or a vampire. I think one of my most viewed videos about keeping dwarves happy, I talk about how my fortress has a walled-off vampire because they flipped out in a temple. Not for even a specific reason, they were mad, their temper was bad enough, and they got mad enough that they got themselves cursed by misbehaving in a temple. So that's divine intervention, that is a form of magic. That's a good note by the wiki, technically, I didn't think of that. Some mega beasts, like dragons, bronze colossi, are explicitly described as magical, because it's a dragon or it's animated by magic if it's a statue, but they do not currently possess overtly magic features. And then magical artifacts. So magical jewelry and weapons made from primordial remnants can be found by dungeon guardians who reside in mysterious. So this is what we're going to talk about. This is how new magic stuff has been added in the Siege update, is kind of building the scaffolding for how magic is going to work in general. So we're going to talk quite a bit more about primordial remnants. Alright, but before we talk about all the nitty-gritty, what exists in terms of the game code and what's being speculated, let's talk about, for upcoming development, we're quoting the Toady 1 directly. The goals are, quote, magic diverse enough to make sieges and siege defense more exciting. That includes kidnap humans and dwarves trained by demons as sorcerers, deity-based powers, and temple ceremonies. That's interesting. I'll have to look into more of what temple ceremonies involve. So that would actually give a reward for, like, encouraging the religions, having the priests, like, conducting ceremonies. Interesting. I think that's a great idea. Tie the religions to, like, magical potential of the users. And then they also say other magic based on the supernatural structure of the world, which is pretty vague. They also mention resident wizards help to defend these wizards help to defend the fortress against magical sieges while you aim them in their work. So kind of like an additional siege defense kind of thing. Resident wizards would also assign assistants to work in magic workshops and to go off-site for research tasks. So this is basically a combination of the messenger system where you send dwarves out to like achieve something off map, off site. But then it's also kind of like the library system where there will be scholars and there will be scribes. So it's basically it's similar to a lot of the workshops, the more advanced workshops where you have to assign. There'll be priests and then dancers, or there'll be like scholars and then scribes. It's going to be like wizards and their assistants. And if you staff that correctly and give them what they need, then you'll have like access to magical things. And then they also mention laboratory zones can incorporate lab equipment for alchemy and other magical research. So you can really get like a good, that's going to be great, honestly, because I love to staff a good tavern, staff a good library. If I can get magical potions and stuff and other magical effects purely out of, just kind of staffing a complex work zone. I'll do that for sure. First, we're going to talk about primordial remnants, and then we're going to talk about Mysterious dungeons. So mysterious dungeons have been added to adventure mode. There is lore progressing. The Toady one clearly wants to tell us like a story of creation and Genesis. And so that's being built in right now. And all right, we're going to talk about it in order. So in the latest versions, there have been scaffolding of new magic systems, and these have been largely fleshed out by primordial remnants, which can be found in mysterious dungeons. We're going to go in order. First is primordial remnants. Primordial remnants, alternatively known as remnants of creation and mythical remnants, are a type of procedurally generated material that can be found as artifacts. The name and appearance of a remnant is generated based on its associated sphere. Do we have to go into spheres? Possibly. Actually, I think we should. Spheres are going to be important for magic. This is actually pretty important. A sphere or a cosmic principle is an aspect where a being has influence. Deities, forces, angels, demons, megabeasts, semi-megabeasts, forgotten beasts, and titans may be associated with one or more spheres, and civilizations may prefer certain spheres when selecting creatures to worship. There are currently, there are currently a total of 130 spheres. Wow, so that's going to be actually quite a beautiful procedural magic system if we engage all 130 spheres. Jesus Christ. All right. Ancient artifacts known as primordial remnants are connected to spheres, taking a unique form and granting powers dependent on what sphere they're connected to. There's already, if you go to the Wikia, there's a huge chart for spheres of influence and what these, they're pebble-sized. For the purposes of adventure mode, they are pebble-sized because it specifically says napping is like a type of combat in Dwarf Fortress adventure mode, and it involves picking up pebble-sized rocks and like flinging them or using them. These remnants, these primordial remnants, are like pebble-sized things that your adventurer can pick up, and they have incredible properties based on apparently 130 spheres. That's still blowing my mind. All right, so as an example, just going to give an example. Apparently this is all procedural, and you might have all kinds of crazy things. I already feel like I can't do this justice in one video, so I'll circle back. But mysterious dungeons in adventure mode now have primordial remnants, which are pebble-sized items which can be implemented as super-powered, super-enchanted items. And that also relates to 130 spheres of influence, which affects all of like temple worship, gods. That's so cool that the dev team is gonna tie in like the temple, the worship, the religion system into the magic. That works great because it's so procedural, it's so weird, it's so dark that like that is really perfect for Dwarf Fortress. All right, so list of possible remnants as compiled by the Dwarf Fortress wiki as it stands. Possible spheres are mountains, mineral caverns, and then the effects that this item can have are: it can cast ice bolt, it can suffocate, it can cause dizziness, it can propel, it can blind. Jewels, it can propel. Chaos. Chaos can cause pain, blister, bleeding, nausea, dizziness. Darkness, death, nightmares. Can blind, cause pain, paralysis, blind, suffocate, propel. Cause pain, blister, paralysis, bleeding, sicken, cough blood, sicken, vomit blood, nausea, rot, suffocate, cause dizziness. You get the idea. It's still very based on necromancy. It's still very much like it either makes you very sick or it brings dead things back to life. It brings everything towards like a sick zombie center. But again, they're still building this, so I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Is it alright if I swear? Leave in the comments if you prefer that I swear or I don't swear. I'm swearing in this one. I'm unhinged. I'm so angry. I'm so excited for magic. So I want to go into depth about this because I do think it's going to be the structure, that kind of like the scaffolding that magic is built around. There are types. They're in adventure mode now. There are types of remnants that apply certain effects. Most of the effects are necromancy in nature right now, but I believe that's because they're still coding it. Almost all the effects are some combination of propel, blister, blind, bleeding, nausea, cause dizziness. These are existing things that exist in necromancy. But I believe that the descriptions, and there is also art. If you follow these links, you'll see there's art for these different types of spheres, these different like realms of magical influence. And I think that this is going to get fleshed out. Right now, the effects are all necromancy, but I think that eventually, when we have magic, it's going to be in this style. So what do we have for possibles? So possible spheres is what you want to search on the Wikia. But basically, we're talking magic types now. So what are the magic types that are at least have some structure existing in the game? We have mountains, minerals, caverns. There are in-game descriptions, but are also coding descriptions. And in this case, I think that the coding descriptions are more useful. So the main types of magic that may or may not eventually exist in Dwarf Fortress are stone, crystal, chaos, darkness, dream stuff. That's interesting. Fire, light, lightning, as distinct from light, metal, moonstone, mudstone, ice, leaf, salt, cloud stuff, stardust, sunstone, wood, and obsidian. That's a lot. If we actually get like distinct magic in all of those, that'll be quite a lot. A few caught my eye there. So like salt, I think the lore of Dwarf Fortress is that like the creation myth, in the beginning, the universe was an infinite plane of salt. I think that is lore correct. So salt magic is very interesting. And then just quickly to relate, so those were the code names. That's like the direct description of what they do. The spheres, as they are currently named, are mountains, minerals, and caves, jewels, chaos, darkness, death, and nightmares, dreams, fire, light, lightning, metals, moon, muck, oceans and water, plants, salt, mist, sky, storms, and wind, stars, sun, trees, and volcanoes. So that now as I'm reading that out loud, I realize that's also kind of like, that is when you set a temple, they'll worship a god of something very similar in that vein, like darkness, or the god of chaos, or the god of or something like that. It's usually something dark in my case. It's usually like a god of death or something. But so all of these are, and so I think I covered this earlier. Sorry, I'm recording this over a length of time, but magic is going to be tied to the temples. So temples are going to be able to create the wizards and and that's something else that's mentioned on the forum. I'll direct you to the forum. There's a link in the description as well. Toady talks about it being like, there being like artificers. Your wizards will make nice things in addition to like growing in their own magical power. If you set them up right. And it's related to temples, it's related to their religion, which I think is really, really cool. I got mixed up this week. Hopefully this video makes sense. It might make less sense than even usual. If you made it this far, feel free to like, subscribe, leave a comment. We're still trying to grow this channel. Oh, I forgot an important part. So this footage you've been seeing is actually the ending of the Siege Punishing series. In my last two videos, if you go back in my archive, Siege Punishing series. And the whole point was, we turn the siege settings all the way up. We get the most like brutal sieges we can as often as we can, and we see how often we can repel them. We ended up repelling them twice. This footage is the third time where they came with like way more soldiers than we even had, like dwarves, including all the children, and they wiped us out. We ended up actually creating like a stopgap. We're hiding. I could keep playing the map. We're hiding below ground now. Let me know in the comments if you want to see more of that. It's become a pretty desperate map. I've officially cranked up the siege settings to the point that it is not realistic to do anything except suffer in front of them. But so this was the siege that broke this fortress. I promised that in an earlier video. I said I'll make sure to show you guys how this map eventually falls. This is how I consider it fallen. It is officially not fun to play, and I do not see a means of recovering it from this siege. And with the current settings, even if I did somehow miraculously recover this siege, even with hacking, if I killed everybody with lava or a kill command, the next siege would be so on the heels of it that I wouldn't even have time to recover all the dead and bury them and deal with all the traumatic ideas. Anyway, so that's that footage. I admit defeat on my daring the game to siege me to death. It did. It sieged me to death. Congratulations. But yeah, that's all. Please feel free to leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe. Still close to getting monetized. Yeah, thank you all for joining me, as always. Until next time.